I'm Judge Grimes. I'm Judge Grimes, I'm the chair of the prison board. And we're gonna call the meeting to order. As the chair, just to kind of reiterate, and I've been new to these rules, because obviously I work in a courtroom, so this is kind of my first time working with the rules of government as far as I guess the Robert's rules. So if you need to be recognized to speak, if you're not a board member, I'll just ask that you raise your hand, I'll acknowledge you, and then we'll have you speak. And just to kind of keep things orderly, when I get to the end of one of the agendas, I'll see if anybody has any comments. I know there's a lot of people from the community here to speak to the outdoor rec. That is actually in our new business today. So if you're here to comment on that, and you want to comment after we do the discussion, just I'll have you raise your hand, I'll acknowledge you at that time. So generally, how this has worked out at the beginning, we've had the public comments, and since outdoor rec wasn't specifically on the agenda, that's when the comments were made. But today it's on the agenda, so we won't actually have the public comments. Does that make sense, everybody? All right, so for the public comments, I'll open up with the public comments. Does anybody have any comments to be made for items that aren't on the agenda, understanding that public rec is under our new business today? Anybody? Yes, and I'd recognize your name, please.
My name is Carrie Weisman. My comment is about the minutes. Will I have the opportunity when we do the minutes to approve the minutes to speak at that time?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is Captain Mike Smelter. As we made our visit to the Dauphin County prison to speak with them, it became apparent to me that the attitude of the warden is very important to this. So my question is about the warden search. We haven't heard anything about the progress of that search, and even more from our point of view, whether the whole topic of the recreation will be brought up in that search. If we don't know what issues are lifted up, but it's really important for us that whoever is doing that search ask about the prospective warden's attitude towards recreation, whether they have any experience with outdoor recreation, and the attitude about prison treatment in general. We would assume that's being asked, but we don't know. There's no transparency or any opportunity to have any input to that search. So I don't know if anybody can comment about where that search is at this point, whether those questions are being raised.
So
We're just
I
curious.
guess the public question is, what's the status of the search for the board?
Yeah.
So I don't mean that, Kristen, you're in charge of doing the interviews. I don't know if you want to
I'm
comment
Kristen
on that.
Simkins, I'm the Human Resources Director. We are in our final stages of the search. We have conducted interviews. All of the prison board was welcome to attend any of the interviews. Our criminal justice planning director, the controller, myself, and John Connick conducted the interviews. We had a list of, I believe it was 23 questions that we asked. There was questions about inmates, there was questions about treatment plans, there was questions about, there were 23 questions, and there was a lot of questions that we asked them about their history, their experience with corrections. We're actually holding an executive session today, hopefully after this meeting, to discuss how the search is going and where we're at.
All right, thank you. Any other public comments for items not on the agenda? Yes.
So, Mark Kissling, just real quickly on that warden search point. Is it a problem that we haven't heard, that there's been no comments about the warden search, how it would unfold, what the processes would be? So obviously it has to be private information, but just to know about what's happening.
My opinion would be no, but
It's a personnel matter. We don't share interview notes and that type of thing and to the public. It's a personnel matter, so we don't comment it. It's done internally.
I mean logistically, not specific to the individuals, but for the public to understand the process. Someone said to me, what's happening with the search? And I said, I have no idea. It's actually news to me that there have been interviews.
Right, we don't normally publicly put out when we're conducting interviews or things like that for any positions within the county. We post a position, And then there are actions on agendas as they happen, once decisions are made.
Very date at which you hope to have this person on board.
Well, that's why we had the executive session to see what's going on. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just one more request. I don't know if there are additional interviews. I didn't quite catch that. But if there are final interviews, a request would be that you ask whether they support outdoor recreation.
Take it under advisement. Anybody else? Okay. So we have the approval of the minutes from May 11th, 2023. Are there any comments on the minutes? I think that you wanted to bring something up.
Yes.
And you just again for your name for the,
Yeah, let me stand just so you can hear me better. My name is Carrie Weisman, Wiessmann. I have signed in. We appreciate the recording of the minutes for each board meeting and respectfully ask that the May minutes be amended. The May minutes refer to several public commenters. However, there were 15 public commenters in favor of outdoor recreation, with 31 county residents who are supporters of outdoor recreation attending in total, with several experts giving testimony. So once before this happened, and in December, when the November minutes were lacking, the November minutes were revised and approved at the January meeting. We would like the May minutes to be amended to include the names of people who spoke, their relevant qualifications, and a one-sentence description of what they said. In other words, we would like them to look more like the April minutes looked, which did in fact cite each of those. And of course, we hope that when there are future minutes, that the people who spoke, their names and a one-sentence statement about what they said would be included in those minutes. Thank you very much.
all right. So do we have any discussion on the minutes before we move for a motion to approve? Any discussion? Anybody want to move to approve the minutes?
I guess in terms of discussion, I did think it might make sense to include the number of people who spoke.
Do we have that information?
I can.
Yeah.
And
All right. So do we just do a motion to amend the number of people? Is that what? All right.
move to,
I'd second that motion. All right. With the understanding that we have to amend and we approve otherwise. I move to approve.
I will move to approve the minutes, with including the number of people who spoke on the topic of outdoor recreation.
I'd second that.
Second.
Okay. Sure. I'm just trying to move things around.
Yeah.
All right. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, facility reports.
Good morning, everybody. Start off with our facility population snapshot as of May 31st, 2023. Total count that day was 196 incarcerated individuals. 114 were from Center County. 17 of those were females, 97 males. Of our Center County population, 33 are serving a county sentence. 71 are not sentenced as of that date, and 10 are awaiting departure to the state correctional facility for a state sentence. Our Tennant County population on that date was 82 individuals, 14 females, 68 males. Of those, 58 were sentenced, 23 not sentenced, and one of those was a state sentence. For the Center County unsentenced population that date, we had 43 males and 4 females that were incarcerated on new charges. Probation and parole only violations were 9. Probation and parole with new charges were 15, for a total unsentenced population of 71. I thought this graph was an interesting graph I wanted to show. This goes back to 2005, showing the population, the total population, as you can see in 2005, was around 150 individuals incarcerated. Center County, no, excuse me, that was the wrong number there. Center County population is the orange, total population is the red, and the yellow there on the bottom is our Tennant counties. You can see how it has rows, we were about in the high years of 2014, 2015, up over 350 total individuals incarcerated. And as you heard, at the end of May, we were at 196. Just thought that was an interesting graph that I would share. The COVID protocols on May 11th, the CDC updated recommendations for COVID precautions within corrections facilities. So therefore, effective May 22nd, after meeting with the medical professionals from Prime Care, we changed our COVID protocols as follows. Testing will continue for all new commitments. Those new commitments who are negative will now only be quarantined for 48 hours or until classified for general population, which is normally 48 to 72 hours. Positive tests and refusals to test will continue the 10-day quarantine that was previously imposed. Moving on to our Prime Care medical report, continuing with COVID for the month of May, we had 159 tests administered. We had 0 positives and no new vaccines were administered. Total sick calls for the month of May were 147. Total individuals seen by a physician or the PA for the month were 204. Total outside medical consultations were 19. Total returning citizens on medical medications were 113, or approximately 57.5% of our population. Total on over-the-counter medications for the month was 67. Total seen by the mental health clinician for the month was 266. Psychiatrists seen 65 individuals. And the number of individuals on mental health medications is 101, or approximately 51.5% of our population. Commitments with co-occurring disorders, we had a total of 25, 15 from Center and 10 from 10 counties. Of those 25, only 14 were medication compliant upon commitment. For the month, we had 13 suicide watches. Detoxing individuals are also placed on suicide watch were 2. And detox total for 18. The substance detox totals for the month breakdown: 2 were on heroin, opiates, or fentanyl. 1 was benzodiazepines, 2 for meth, 4 alcohol, 5 Suboxone, and 4 individuals were multiple of those various drugs and alcohol. Mental health stability rating snapshot as of May 31st. We got of 196, we had 36 individuals in category A, 21 from Center, 15 from Tenant counties. Category B, we have 29, 11 from Center, 18 from Tenant. Category C, we have 103, 64 of those Center County, 39 Tenant counties. Category D, we have a total of 15, 8 from Center County, 7 Tenant counties. And there's 13 individuals awaiting placement. And I always have the note here that includes those who refuse to meet with mental health. Some individuals just will absolutely not sit down and talk to mental health. So we technically can't give them a rating.
Glenn, just for the public, I think from A to D, A is with the least severity and D with the greatest severity.
Yes, A is you basically have no mental health issues. B is you could have had a past mental health issue, are on medication, you're compliant, no issues. C is you're on medication, but you're compliant, but you may be more apt to having problems. And D is usually non-compliance with medication, non-compliance with treatment, and severe mental illness. So,
Thank you.
yes, ma'am. Work release for the month. We had total of 26 individuals for the month working outside with an average daily Center County sentence population of 45.23. Centerpiece for the month had 7. We had 11 individuals who had jobs at private employers. We had 5 working on facility grounds, 3 at county maintenance. I also have a brief breakdown of those who did not get outside. We had 2 that refused to work. 5 were on detainers, 2 disciplinary. We had 2 work release violations, individuals who were on work release and violated the work release rules, so they were pulled back inside and not permitted to go outside. 1 not medically cleared, 3 were due to institutional behavioral history, and 4 were not eligible per the courts based on their charges. I wanted to update everybody on the earn time. at the correctional facility during the month of May, in conjunction with the Center County Judges and District Attorney's Office. We completed a review and update of the earned time guidelines for our correctional facility. Basically, the definition of the earned time for our facility is persons who are convicted, sentenced, and committed to the Center County Correctional Facility may receive earned time credit for successful participation in the Center County Reentry Program. Center County Reentry Program was created to encourage inmates who express an affirmative desire to better themselves to actively participate in programming that will assist them in achieving a crime-free lifestyle. The Center County Reentry Program allows inmates to earn time towards early release by participating in job training, whether that's work release or community reentry or volunteer work, and the educational programs provided that the inmate is eligible for the reentry program, and maintains a satisfactory conduct record while incarcerated and is finally approved by the courts. Ineligible offenders for earned time are inmates serving mandatory sentences. So if you get a flat sentence of 90 days for DUI, for example, that's a law that you have to do that 90 days. We can't credit you with earned time. Inmates serving a sentence where eligibility for participation in the reentry program was not specifically included in the sentencing order. Inmates that receive misconducts or commit new criminal offenses while incarcerated. Inmates who are serving a sentence based on or following a parole revocation. All other sentenced inmates are reviewed on a case-by-case basis for possibility of earned time. And finally, in addition, the court maintains the right to reject any inmate's application or petition for early release. Furthermore, the district attorney maintains the right to raise an objection and be heard on any application for petition for early release at any time. Calculation of earned time is based on the following: an inmate who is participating in work release in the outside work program, which would include centerpiece, county maintenance, facility groundwork, may receive 1 day for every 6 days they work. An inmate who is participating in any in-house volunteer program at CCCF to include the kitchen, laundry, maintenance, or hallway workers may receive 1 day for every 10 days they work. Inmate housing unit trustees will receive 1 day for every 30 days worked. An inmate who successfully passes GED test may receive 1 day for every test passed. And an inmate who graduates from the incarcerated youth program will receive 1 day for completion of the program. An inmate who successfully completes the Compass program may receive 3 days credit. An inmate who successfully completes the Decision Points program will receive 2 days credit. An inmate who successfully completes the Crossroads Drug and Alcohol program will receive 1 day's credit. An inmate who successfully completes Crossroads Mental Health program will receive 1 day's credit. And an inmate who successfully completes a parenting program will receive 1 day credit. Any questions on the earned time?
The one thing I will add, though, is that we also streamline the
Yes,
the procedure. We took, a lot of people wanted to have a say in having a say in whether the earned time should be granted for the parole. So we cut that to minimum, which will speed up the results.
yes, we had about a 5 or 6 step approval process, and now it's down to 2. So that should expedite and nobody will get lost in the shuffle, so everybody can get credit for their earned time if eligible.
A question, please.
Can we wait till the very end at the?
Sure.
at the
It relates to this.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do it at the end of the facility reports.
Okay. I wanted to recognize and congratulate, we recently had 4 officers attend the crisis intervention training. I don't know our total now, how many we've had trained
Well,
here?
I think that puts us up to about 55 we've sent through overall, and about 22 that still, I have to always give the numbers carry, something like
Yeah.
22 that are still employed here, but those 55, I keep getting mad at all the other agencies because we've got ones that we sent to training that now work at probation, the sheriff's, Patton Township, Ferguson Township, state parole. Yeah, so a lot of those have gone on to work in other, even if they're not here at the facility. So we appreciate all our time with the CIT program.
It is an excellent program. It's a very week-long intensive program. I know Commissioner Dersham has sat through it back in 2017 and got to experience the training and the participation in the class. So it's definitely an eye-opener. But we wanted to congratulate Officer Richner, Officer Harvey, Lieutenant Webb, and Officer Bickle, and also in the photo is Deputy Gordon, who's on the CIT steering committee as well.
And Glenn, if I could just add, that brings Center County's total to 441 that have been trained.
through our CIT program, a little over 12 years probably. 2010 was the first, like inception of the program, and then they came back and held the trainings.
All right, so before we get to, I'm sorry.
That's all I have for facility
All right,
reports. sir.
any comments from the board prior to hearing the public questions? Regarding facility reports? Okay,
I just think it's important for the public to know that nobody is eligible to any of this work release unless they've been sentenced.
correct, because you can't get work release unless you're sentenced.
Right, so we have 71 people sitting here who are unsentenced, which leads me to believe that there's a holdup there. How can the courts expedite these 71 people to be sentenced?
So how this works is if you're charged with a criminal charge, there'll be a process as far as the arraignment. At that point, they have an attorney. We have our pre-trials, our terms are every 2 months. So our next one's coming up in July, then the next one would be the August term. What happens is, for whatever reason, they'll have attorneys, the DA charges, there might be motions to suppress. There might be other charges that might be holding them. There might be the fact that they're in plea negotiations, then there's a trial. But as far as the court, we process the cases, and how it works between the district attorney's office and their private counsel and how they're proceeding is controls the flow of it. So once you're charged, and the bottom line is that under the Constitution, you have a right to be brought to trial for 365 days. So in a way that you're not brought to trial within that year is if, as the defendant, you are asking for continuances for whatever your strategy may be. So as far as from the court's perspective, we're moving pretty quickly. We actually just had our jury selection and all cases resolved except for we picked one jury. So, and we used to have 2 days, so we're actually cutting it down to 1 day because not everybody's picking jury trials for whatever reason anymore. So as far as a direct answer, it's hard to give you because there are numerous factors that could play into why someone might be sick.
But you're feeling that the courts are moving as quickly as they can.
Yes, I mean, we're reactive. So we have to go by whatever the defense and the prosecution want to do. So if the defendant says, hey, I have a trial coming up, but oh, I have new charges out of Clearfield County, I'd rather just do a continuance and sit because I know I'm going to do a global plea to resolve things, then the case will go on. If the defendant says I want to go to trial, then we pick the trial. So the only thing that would be an issue as far as the court flow would be if we didn't have trial dates, which we do. So they're available, and every 2 months we do their jury selection, and if they want a trial to move to resolve the case, they can. Or if they want to do a plea, all 4 of the judges have plea days every month, and we also have special plea criminal pretrial dates with every term. And then if someone needs to get out, I do this a lot of times, like someone's got a DUI and they got their task evaluation and they want to get out and not wait for that plea date, we'll just give them a separate date earlier because we want to make sure that they're out by the time they reach their minimum. So I don't see any issue with case flow as far as the courts. Again, a lot of that would be discussion between the individual cases between the district attorney's office and the attorneys. Yes.
Do these include parole and probation violations too? You understand?
Yes. Yeah, because if you had a probation or parole violation, you're already out in the community, and for whatever reason, I mean, it could be something technical, it could be something more substantial. You violated, so at this point, you would be housed until you were able to have your parole revocation hearing or probation revocation hearing. And again, it's not a singular aspect. So a lot of times, let's say you have a parole or probation violation, you might have new criminal charges that might be holding you too. Let's say, I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I think there was one where there was a domestic assault, the person was on probation, so now they have a probation violation, they're sitting, but they're also sitting on the new domestic assault case. So, I mean, again, a lot of things, there's a lot of different aspects that play into each individual case.
Judge, would you mind if I shared a statistic that the DA and I looked up last month?
Sure, yeah, for sure.
I think there's some misconception possibly as to, like, those 71 people next month are not all the same 71 people. So because of our alternatives to recreation committee, the district attorney asked me to do a quick look. It's not something I can do without going person by person. There's no like daily report for this, but we looked at how many people have been here for 6 months without a disposition of their case, because that seemed like it would be a long time. So I don't know what the statistic is under 6 months, but I looked for 6 months, and unfortunately, we have a number of individuals who have mental health issues, and that whole process with the state, that's not the courts, there's a whole separate thing. We had 5 individuals who are here more than 6 months. One of them was the jury that was selected, so that trial is scheduled. Of the other 4, an additional one was a homicide charge, 2 were major drug cases, and 1 was a serious sexual crime. So in looking at those 4, it seemed like there were potentially really obvious reasons that their cases might take longer. So every time it says 50, 70 people, those probably by September will not be the 50, 70 people. They are moving through more quickly. So even though it seems like a large number, it's not the same group month to month. And there's a lot of attention, I think, from the courts, from the district attorney, from the judges, to be really aware of speeding up that process to the extent it's possible within those challenges that he outlined.
And I think you bring up a good point too with the 6 month is why you're saying, why is it 6 month? Why look at the 6 month? Well, the 6 month is because on that rule, the 365-day rule, if you're in jail on a bail, a cash bail that's holding you at 180 days, the 6 month mark, if your case has not been resolved at that point, then you can actually file a motion as a defendant to be released. If you're sitting on pre-determination as far as you haven't gone to trial yet or had a disposition on your case. So that's the 180-day rule, we call it. So after 6 months, if you have new charges and you're sitting on bail and the case hasn't been resolved, then by constitutional right, unless you've asked for these continuances as a defendant, you can file a motion to have your bail reduced to a nominal bail, which is like $1 or something like that. But that's the 6 month cutoff. I think is probably why you're kind of.
We sort of had that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really, there's one person whose case is at a clear point, and then there's 4 that are somewhere in that process. So it's not out of the 196, it's 4 that we're really sort of involved in.
And out of this chart here, again, for the snapshot, just for that day, you'll see that 47 are on new charges only. And then probation and parole waiting revocation is 9. And then probation and parole means they were already released, they were on probation and parole, and they got new charges. There's 15 of those individuals. So that's how that's broke down to get to the 71. And as Deputy Gordon said, those 71 individuals might not be the same 65 next month. Might be half of them maybe are the same, but it changes every month.
And to Deputy Warden Irwin's credit, you approached the court too, saying, what about some of the folks that are sitting there on detainers for probation and parole? And that's, as the court, we reach out to probation and say, what's the status? Like what? We don't want people just sitting. Well, actually, what we don't want to do as the court is let the probation department make the decision on how long someone sits. So once we do that, we make sure, and they, if you have a probation parole violation, you automatically are going to get the public defender's office. So you're going to have counsel to kind of also push along the streamline and make sure that that hearing is held for probation parole. But you do have to go through what are called gagnon hearings. I don't want to get too technical here, but you have to go through, first of all, you have your gagnon hearing, right, for a hearing level, then you have to have your gagnon hearing before a court of common police judge. So that's a bit of a process too to get through those violations.
I just had one last thing. It is someone's job to meet with inmates to make sure they know they have a straight sentence and they're not looking forward to days off when they are not even eligible for that.
Well, I'm assuming that their attorney apprises them of that when they're talking about their sentencing and their sentence, and they get a copy of the court order. And then when they're here, the counselor will tell them, you know, here, you're sentenced us for 5 months, here's the programs you're eligible for, and they can tell
So
them.
the counselor does.
Yeah,
As the court does too.
yeah, so they actually hear it twice.
I was just saying, of the individuals that come to Centerpiece, they always know, they will tell me, I'm not eligible for early, I'm not getting good time for being here because I have a set sentence date. So that I have not met anyone yet that didn't know.
Here is a person who that was not clear to. So that's why I'm bringing it up. It's not clear at all.
I can't speak to what transpired years ago. I wasn't
I
present.
understand, but I think it's important that people have that clearly understood.
All right. Any other comment, moving on, okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. First
That's
of all, thank you, Judge, for explaining all that. I know it's technical, but I think it's really helpful for all of us. So thank you so much. And I am always asking questions about statistics. It seems to be in my DNA. So I just have questions about the medical and the mental health medications. If we could go to those slides. I wrote down 113 medical medications and 101 mental health medications. So are those two medication statistics related to each other? Does that mean out of those 113 medications, 101 of them are for mental health and the others are for physical? Or are those statistics derived in completely different ways?
Well, if you're, I'll let you explain the medication process. You explain your.
Please don't mind my voice. I think the air quality is getting to me. So at the end of the month, on the 31st, this month, I go through and each patient, I look at their charts. Say you're on low pressor, that's medical medication, and then you're on Zyprexa, that's a psychiatric medication. So those go to two different categories. And then obviously the over-the-counter medications are a different category, so they don't really correlate within each other. Somebody can be on mental health medications and it doesn't go into the medical category.
Okay, so the medical medications, that person could also be on mental health medication and it's a double.
Yep,
They're
it
getting,
counts for
they're counting
one
in
on
both,
each category.
both areas.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions on facility reports? Okay, old business.
Looks like that's me. I am old business. The alternative, recreational alternatives committee meeting met this past Tuesday. Our first couple of meetings focused on what opportunities might exist out in the community or new opportunities might exist out in the community for individuals to participate in. We looked at, for example, returning to Union Cemetery, which the correctional facility previously did, and some other options. This past meeting, actually, we took a little bit of a turn, and it was at the suggestion of DA Cantorna, and Melanie and Vanessa are going to look into developing a policy and procedure for community organizations that we can hand out to those organizations to say, here are the things you need to meet, the criteria you need to meet or qualify for to have individuals come and participate in your facility or your operations stuff. So in that way, they're aware ahead of time what they need to do, what if there's insurance requirements, if there's security requirements, supervision requirements, and then they can make that determination from there that, okay, yes, we're interested, and now we know what we need to do to actually have individuals come to our facilities. And then, so we're not necessarily spinning our wheels all the time, do we need to reach out to this organization, that organization? We can reach out to a few, hand them the information, and then they can come back to us as well and say, yeah, we're actually interested and we meet the qualifications, or we're this close and we can get there pretty soon. So I think that was a good new sort of direction and kind of maybe it probably should have been a better starting point too. So we're looking forward maybe at the June meeting or so, Melanie and Vanessa, if you want to throw anything else in, didn't seem like that would be terribly big lift to develop that policy and procedure, since we have a few that can correlate to that as well already. So stay tuned on that one, but because we did have a few organizations that came up, but that's where this conversation spun to, that maybe if we had something we could give to them ahead of time and say, here's how we qualify, here's how you qualify to participate, and then they can make that determination from there if they do qualify, or if there's only a few hurdles and they'd be interested in meeting those hurdles. So it was a pretty productive.
Glenn, can you reread the difference between work reentry and work release, the statement that you?
Which portion are you referring to?
Well, just because, there's so many community members, that I don't think that they understand that there's a difference between work reentry and work release.
So work release is if you have a job at a private employer, you're technically on work release. You go out daily to your job. We allow you to work up to 6 days a week. We do not allow 7-day-a-week jobs. We do allow overtime. The employer has to contact Ms. Billet to set that up in advance. If it's an emergency situation after hours, the shift commanders have the authorization that if the employer calls in here, I need Johnny to stay 3 extra hours due to an emergency at work. The shift commander has the authority to approve that. And then the person can stay at work for those hours at the boss's request. Ms. Bill was notified and she tracks that as well. We don't allow people to work 7 days a week. Everybody needs a day off. Community reentry is like going to Centerpiece. Facility grounds, we consider that community reentry because you're outside working. We're still trying to establish communications with Union Cemetery. Pre-COVID, we had sent crews down there occasionally to help out. I know Union Cemetery is very active. They have a lot of other community groups that are coming in to help them. So I don't know where we fell in the shuffle, but I have another call into an individual waiting to get a response back. I'm constantly looking for maybe places that we can send individuals to help out. Depending where it is, like the Union Cemetery, if we send individuals there, we have to send the correction officer with them. Someone has to supervise them from the facility. At Centerpiece, we allow the Centerpiece staff to supervise them. So a lot of factors go into all that, but that's the difference between work release and community reentry. So
And just because I had someone ask me at the last meeting, which is why I'm asking for that clarification. And as a memorandum of understanding with Centerpiece, Centerpiece has a full-time staff member that's all they do is supervise individuals.
Yes.
From CCCF, we provide insurance and we provide the transportation. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood the difference between the two.
No, I appreciate that part. That's actually a really good point, because primarily the programs we're looking at are for the reentry, because the work release, people are already employed at that employer. So this is the reentry programs to get, so I appreciate that question and get that clarified. So everyone is aware of who we're talking about. And that's a sizable portion of the population. So, more to come as we get through that policy and procedure, probably at our June meeting. No, July meeting, it is June. We'll have that hopefully be update in July.
it's interesting when you talk about the individuals at working at Centerpiece. My wife's a frequent shopper. And occasionally she forces me to go shopping with her, and that's one of our stops. So a couple of Saturdays ago, I popped in, and there were inmates working, and they looked up and went, "Oh, Warden's here." I'm like, I'm here to check on you, honestly. I'm here to see how much I'm carrying out at the end of their shopping trip. So that's all I had for that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all I had.
Are you gonna mention about one of our tenant coming?
That's the next agenda item. So I was gonna leave that to.
That's me, right?
That's
Okay. All right, so on to the Schuylkill County work release update. I wasn't here at the last meeting. District Attorney Cantorna contacted me to see if I would try to enter into some sort of discussion with Schuylkill County President Judge to see if we can get their inmates that are housed here approved for work release. I think there's been a policy from Schuylkill County that they're not eligible for work release. I was able to talk to the President Judge of Schuylkill County. That President Judge set up a meeting with their district attorney and their chief probation officer. Had District Attorney Cantorna sit in with our chief probation officer and was able to basically get Schuylkill County to sign off on work release for other Schuylkill County inmates. So they're approved for work release at that point, and then I turned it over to Deputy Warden Irwin, who got in contact with their warden, iron it out, but I'm not quite sure what they had the policy they had, but they were able to be convinced.
I'm not sure either, but since that meeting between the judges and probation, Melanie and I and Vanessa, Director Height, we had a conference call with the warden from Schuylkill County. He was pleased with the decision that was made. So now we're going through the steps to get individuals from Schuylkill cleared to go outside to community reentry. And if an employer will hire an out-of-county individual, we're in favor of that too. We don't know how some employers will be with, I was only going to be here 6 months, but some employers might be happy with a 6-month employee. So those steps are in process. So Schuylkill County will be considered now for outside. So we may have additional individuals for Centerpiece. We may have additional individuals to mow lawns. But that process is rolling along. We are happy to see it. So
Yeah, it's good that actually, they were kind of sticking on the work release for private employers. I was like, well, they're here, they can
Yeah.
make money, they can, support their family, pay their, pay fines, or whatever else they need to do. And then for the board, then they wanted to see if they could negotiate how much they pay to have, I said, no, that's not on the agenda. So it seemed to work out for the best as far as that way. And that's where we are with it. All right, any public comment on old business?
Just
Yes.
thank you, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you for doing that. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I was gonna
Take the wins where we can get them, right?
I was gonna say the same thing. Thank you to you, Judge, and to all the folks who were involved tonight.
Yeah, and to the deputy warden's credit, he stepped up and did what he needed to do to kind of we got it in principle, and then deputy warden closed the deal, so I appreciate that.
Connie had provided me with a packet of information. It timed out really well. One of the individuals in her parenting program, they were given a goal of a problem to
A
solve.
problem-solving project.
Sort of like a decision points program that we were, I thought it was interesting, and he was from Schuylkill County. And his big thing was he wanted to get Schuylkill County inmates eligible for work release at our facility. He had steps that he was gonna follow, and so I haven't met with him yet to tell him that it was approved, but I thought
I'll
that
see him
was-
on Saturday if you don't get a chance before that.
Thought that was interesting. And he had a very good thought process on how to
Very
go
good.
about it. So
Very good.
that's all I had under old business, sir.
All right, so we'll move on to new business. I'm sure this is the main event for a lot of people that are in attendance today. So I'll open discussion with the board regarding discussion of scope of potential feasibility study involving outdoor recreation. So anybody from the board want to open up the discussion?
I can just make a few comments. for the
Sure,
board,
absolutely.
Sir. As we've always long said that the administration is not opposed to outdoor recreation as far as administration does. We work for the Board of Inspectors. Just a couple things to keep in mind. If we're gonna discuss a feasibility study, first off, this isn't gonna be a 30-day thing where we have information in 30 days to finalize everything. We have to do this correctly to study if it's feasible for our facility. We have to do it in a very secure manner. Recently, in the very near distant past, within the last 2 weeks, there was an escape from Clearfield County Correctional Facility from their outdoor recreation yard. The individual that escaped from that facility has been an individual who was incarcerated here at our facility numerous times. So I just wanted to bring that up. Along with that escape, there had been 2 other escapes in the recent months in Pennsylvania from outdoor recreation areas. There's also been another escape from a county facility during outside transport. So security is a big thing. And there's no shortcut to security, and security isn't always convenient, but it's to keep the secure setting that we have, to protect the community, to protect possible victims of the crimes the individuals who are incarcerated here. As everybody can see, the area right around the jail is growing tremendously. We are no longer the building that has nothing around it. We have a shopping complex across the street. We have just a new land deal that's right behind the correctional facility that's coming into play that will have a hotel. Across the street on this side, we have Rudders, which is a huge truck stop that you monitor the traffic in and out of there. We have the interstate here, obviously. So if an inmate would escape our facility, it puts a lot of people at risk. And they have easy methods to get out of our community quickly. There was, at the old correctional facility, I believe in the early 90s, there was an escape from the courtyard down there, which that individual went downtown Bellefonte, assaulted a female, stole her vehicle. So I don't want to say this will be a quick response, but we're going to need time. Again, it's up to the board, but we're going to need time to review the security. We got to discuss safety concerns. We got to discuss staffing. We got to discuss if we're going to look at 1 yard, 2 yards, a smaller yard for each individual housing area. And then the staffing, depending on what option we come up with. As of today, if we had an outdoor recreation yard of any size, we do not have the staff to man it. It would not be open. So whatever would be built would be sitting there not utilized. Don't have the staff to put out there. I don't want to sound like a broken record with that, but just wanted to make sure I discussed that. The concerns with separations are also big. Right now, the way this facility was designed, it allowed us to keep individuals separated who may be co-defendants in criminal charges. They may be a family member of a victim of another individual's crime or alleged crime. And we don't want those individuals to get together because that could create friction and possible fight scenarios. And again, we want to keep a safe environment for everybody. So a feasibility study, it's going to be a very time consuming thing. And it's not something that Melanie or myself can devote 8 hours a day to because we also have to run the jail. But I just wanted to bring those security concerns up and let you know my thought process on it.
Sure.
I'd like to also state that in addition to the warden's concerns, there's another one, which is the introduction of contraband into the facility through the use of drones and other technology.
Yes, I did not mention that. Sorry, I forgot that one. Yeah, that's a huge thing recently. There was in Northeast Pennsylvania recently. I won't mention the county, but there was, they have outdoor recreation and they had thankfully got some intelligence ahead of time that 2 individuals were going to use a slingshot, old fashioned method, get close enough and slingshot drugs over the yard in cooperation with the sheriff's office, the local police and the state police and the attorney general's office. They had staked the area out around the jail in an undercover sting operation, arrested the 2 individuals who showed up with the drugs and the slingshot to get the drugs inside the yard. We do not want to have drugs in our facility. I can assure you today, we have a very safe facility. We have the body scanner. We have the drug test. I don't want to have an overdose in our facility. It's bad enough the overdoses we have on the street. I don't want to give any opportunity to introduce drugs into our facility. And I have to make that phone call to the board telling them that we had a drug overdose. It's just something I don't want to do. So those are just my thoughts that, you know, I know everybody wants an answer, but this is not going to be a quick, next month I'll have everything for you.
Yeah, I mean, the way I approach things is kind of a practical analysis. It's kind of not do my job, but the, you know, if this is a undertaking that, you know, maybe in the future, then obviously there's going to be increased risk. I mean, that's just how it is if you have a less secure environment. But then obviously you're going to weigh it with what a lot of the advocates for the open rec are, is that it's better for the mental health of the citizens that are here. I think as a board member, I think it's important for us just to do our due diligence to kind of answer the questions. And I think that's the question is, you know, what is this going to cost? And what does this look like? And what's the scope of this? And what's the staffing requirement? And I mean, obviously from a government standpoint, cost is a big one. And also that there's probably have to be some sort of physical modification of the building. I'm not a prison designer, so I don't know that, but obviously this, as I think has been brought up by the community members, this prison was not set up to have an outdoor rec. So there's gonna have to be some sort of modification that would have to be done, and what are different ways that could be approached. As the deputy warden was just saying, if you do have outdoor rec, you're gonna have to make sure that you have staffing, which obviously staffing's been an issue. So how do you overcome that issue? The cost, I mean, what's the cost of the feasibility study? What's the cost of actually the different results of if you decide to go down that road? You know, what's the impact on the facility, and what are the legal impacts? You know, as far as if you have one outdoor rec, does it require other people? I mean, these are issues that I'm gonna have to take a look at. So, but I think from at least what I've heard, since to be quite honest, I was kind of caught off guard by this because I took the board in January and I didn't realize this was on the radar. And obviously there's a pretty vocal part of the community that has been addressing the importance of this, and they're passionate about it. To me, it's to do our due diligence and what we're here to do. I think to actually engage to find some sort of study to see exactly what this is going to look like, what this would cost, is kind of the question that needs to be answered, because I don't think we have that answer right now. So I think that's the part of the new business is, you know, what's the potential for the feasibility study? I'm assuming that you would have to look at different organizations that do prison construction or management, and then find out who you want to use, get the estimate, give them the information. And yeah, there's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of moving parts.
There are design and engineering firms out there that obviously design prisons. The first questions they're gonna ask of us is, what do you want? You know, what do you want to consider that you want? So we have to sit down and say, here's options that we would like to consider. Here's the security features that we're gonna need for the yard or yards. We have to upload the information to them that we're gonna want from our facility wise. So that's gonna take some time, if that's the direction that we're given, to get all that together, because I certainly don't want to present something to the board prior to presenting it to an engineering firm, and then we build something, and then 6 months from now, it's like, well, why didn't we consider that? I want to make sure that we don't want to rush this. I want to make sure that we have looked at all the possible options that we could possibly come up with. Again, to continue as secure as facilities we possibly can for a correctional facility.
This is just more just kind of a curiosity question for me, because we have 5 pods. Is that right? 5?
9.
9, sorry, yeah, 9 pods. So would there have to be some sort of outdoor component to each one of those, or would you have one component where you'd have to now start moving people around? I mean, because I don't think it's set up for that, so.
No, it's not.
I mean, I know you don't.
Yeah,
You're going to talk to someone about this, but what would that look like?
For example, if we would do one big yard,
Yeah.
and to give everybody the 2 hours a day out there with 9 pods, we're gonna be running yard from sunrise to sunset, and we're still probably not gonna meet the 2 hours of outdoor rec with 1 yard. Because you can't put individuals out there again and have separations. I don't know the structurability to put, again, I'm not an engineer, so if we can attach a yard out the backs of each of the housing units, that's gonna take some major engineering construction work. I don't know if that's even feasible, but that if we do that, again, now we're talking 9 additional staff members for a shift, if we limit it to 2 hours. If we do 2 bigger yards, you're gonna need 4 or 5 officers for each yard. And even then, that's gonna be 2 shifts of officers, because you're not gonna get everybody in 1 8-hour shift.
How do you get people from like one pod that's away from the rec yard to
Well,
that rec yard?
That's gonna be the challenge. Now we have emergency egress doors at each end of the building. And I'm gonna have to check with somebody in code enforcement. Am I allowed to use those emergency egress doors as a normal access and egress? I don't know what the code standard says. That's something I have to check on. If not, that's another access point we're gonna have to put into the facility somewhere if we cannot use emergency fire doors to access the yard areas. Movement within the facility is gonna be greatly changed, because we can't have individuals from, say, pod A4 out moving while we're putting B2 out per yard, because there might be separations. That's gonna affect program scheduling. Right now, we're pretty tight on programming as it is. So we may have to totally readjust our programming schedule with the facility. We offer a lot of programs here, and I don't want to see that decline. But something may have to give along the way, that we may not be able to accomplish everything we're doing right now if we have to stop movement in the jail to move yard traffic for 9 different pods. It's gonna be very time consuming, again, depending on what layout we would come up with. Excuse me, back to move your air. So all those things gotta be looked at.
Yeah, I'm assuming whoever would take a look at this and give us proposals or whatever would probably have to be pretty creative and. How to balance this all out.
And they're gonna ask a lot of information of us. They're gonna have to come in and tour the facility. And they're gonna ask us, what are you looking for? You're looking for 1 big yard, you're looking for 2 yards? And then they're gonna have to get creative. And some of them probably know the codes better than I do as far as using fire access doors for regular egress and access points. So a lot of moving parts in this. And again, I certainly don't want to diminish any programming that we currently run. But if we have a lot of movement in and out during the day, it's going to greatly limit our programming opportunities. It's just a statement of fact. So.
Other board members want to question or call?
So it seems like there's questions that we might want, if we're going to ask a firm to look at this feasibility, it's about structure. It's about cost, both the capital investment initially and the ongoing operational cost, the effect on schedule, programming and movement.
Yes.
Those are already a number of major factors. I think one of the things we would need to consider is the administration at the facility and the amount that's on your plates and what's feasible to take on new, both new programming, new schedules, and even just the process of doing this. So I think that all has to be considered in the timetable for how we approach this. But with that, my sense is it might be helpful to possibly consider like an RFQ process where you do a request for qualifications. So that if we don't necessarily know exactly what the scope of a feasibility study and all the questions we have right now, but if we could get a sense of what some of the qualifications of firms are that are out there, and it might help us craft our questions once we know what kind of services are out there to be provided. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would imagine any firm would have some kind of discovery phase where they ask those questions, but some of them will be cursory at first, like, what do you even want to do? Yeah, yeah, no, what do you, and that kind of stuff, and, and certainly from Glenn, what you said, maybe one whole yard isn't the best option, but, if there's some construction or modification to the 9 pods, what would that even look like? So, obviously, all the other concerns are there. We know staffing, we know security, we know, those exist today. They exist every day. So I think, as we look into possibility, it's, I think to Amber's point, I think we start with that RFQ kind of process and see what firms are out there that can look at them. And then we can ask them questions, they can ask us questions, and maybe start, again, beginning of the beginning kind of thing. We just, not to tie two things together, we just went through an ERP process for the county, and that was just software. And that took probably 8 months, so we got to a point to where we're at a phase where we haven't even started implementation yet, and we're still looking at 1.5 years. So, and that's just software implementation. We're talking about construction and facility and security, and so this is not an overnight, this is not this may not even be a 24, 25 thing, but it's gonna be, but if anything comes from it, I think that's where I think it's a starting point for us.
And I just don't have that. I work in the building, this building's about 1850, so I work in a new historical museum, so. I know you might have a little experience, obviously, with the State College School District in the building. I'm not even quite sure how you even kind of broach this. Like, I think you brought up a great point to me, is like, what's the questions we should be asking, and what's the professional, like, so is that, so the RFP, is that kind of like how this starts?
So I think an RFP would be what, maybe, if you're doing a request for proposals, I think you need to have a much clearer sense of all the questions that we have. I don't know that we have the ability to write a strong RFP right now.
No, I don't.
So that's why I think possibly this RFQ process,
RFQ,
where
I'm sorry.
if we do go to a request for qualification, and we get a better understanding of what kinds of professional services are out there that we might be able to engage with, that's going to help us refine the questions that we want to get answered through a potential study.
Yeah, because obviously, if you want to get this potential study, and you want it to be as efficient as possible with cost. So is the RFQ kind of the thought process, John?
Through an RFQ, you're looking to those firms for their expertise. And they would come out, they would look at our particular situation, and then they would come back and say, here's our thoughts on your situation and what you're up against, and here's our proposal as to how we could go about studying this and giving you a product for consideration. So then you would have different perspectives from different firms and on looking at particularly what we're dealing with here. And there's no commitment to that like there is an RFP. An RFP, like Amber said, is, you have to pretty much know what you want, and you're defining to them, here's what we want, give us a quote.
The RFQ, obviously.
Right.
I mean, that'd be at least my opinion.
I agree. I think RFQ is probably where we start. I see this breaking down into at least 4 major areas. One is security, and then also related safety. And it's not just safety for the returning citizens in the correctional facility, it's also safety for county staff and county corrections officers, because outdoor rec yards have a potential for a broad variety of issues, even above and beyond persons using slingshots, drones, et cetera, to drop drugs there. Another area would, I think, fall under operations, staffing, how that would affect programming, movement within the facility. And then we just have the straight out architectural and engineering aspects that once we sort of have an idea of what we might want and could eventually move to a request for proposal, what is that? Is it 2 yards? Is it 3 yards? Is it 7 yards? And we have a couple of smaller pods that use an adjoining rec yard from one of the other pods. We don't even begin to know that yet. And then there's costs, both for the permitting of anything we've decided to construct. We have the actual engineering of that. We have the construction itself. We have potential increased costs for additional maintenance because now we have substantially more facilities to be maintained. And of course, staffing at adequate levels to ensure safety and security. And as you mentioned, Glenn, almost any option that we're thinking through is going to require something in the range of at least 8 additional
I'd say that's a
people at
minimum.
minimum, but it could be 8 additional people times upwards of a shift and a half or 2 shifts.
Yes. Yeah. I will tell you, in my 26 and a half years of experience with running outdoor recreation in the state correctional facilities, outdoor recreation yards and inmate dining rooms are the 2 biggest areas where problems happen in the state facilities. Like I said, I dealt with it for 26 and a half years. Those are major areas of concern. So we don't have a specific dining room inside our facilities. We feed on the housing units, which lessens the amount of people that can congregate in one spot, which can lead to problems, so.
I would suggest that in our request for qualifications, that we're open-ended enough that it's clear we're not necessarily only looking for proposals leading to this construction of yards, but like, what is if our underlying goal is for returning citizens to have more ability to see greenery and to have fresh air and sunshine and some kind of outdoor access, that we leave it a little open-ended, like that we're looking for ways to improve that. So that we potentially come back with a greater, at the end of so that hopefully the end product of the study gives us a broad array of potential ability to, ways that we might potentially improve the current situation.
That could be a modification with the current, instead of new.
I think it's like to get that range, we want to have a range of options.
Any other discussion from the board? All right, I'm gonna open it up for any public comment before we move for.
My name is Mark Kisling again. I just want to start by thanking you for having this discussion and excuse me, opening into the possibilities of what might be potential. It was last July, several of us first came and asked for a study, and I think that speaks to, we understand it will take time, and I appreciate Ward and Irwin saying that, this is not like a snap your fingers. So I truly, genuinely want to thank you. I appreciate this, and I hear the uncertainty, and that's part of it, right? Studying it to see what's possible. I want to mention just a couple of things. One, I sent an email to the board with a list of research and expertise about the benefits of outdoor exposure, both in general and also in carceral settings. In that email, there was a link to a warden, Patty Wachtendorf, speaking about her time in Iowa as the warden at the Iowa State Penitentiary. And I was fortunate to be able to Zoom with her last month, as well as a collaborator of hers, who's a landscape architect at the Iowa State University. And the two of them, together with others, worked on a massive project that brought in outdoor programs to the Iowa State Penitentiary. I asked them, and I shared, resources, newspaper articles about the situation here. I said, what kind of expertise would you like to see in a feasibility study? And they gave me a list. They said it's important to have expertise in environmental psychology, in restorative justice, in trauma-informed practices. And then they said it's really important to have both a landscape architect and an architect. And the importance of thinking about the outside being a part of it. So I found them really powerful to speak with. Warden Wachtendorf retired in 2021, but she said she would be very much open to speaking with people. The other thing I wanted to mention, and perhaps others could reference this, that 7 of us did tour the rec yards at the Dauphin County Prison on May 24th. That it was, for me, a very informative and powerful experience. They spoke to all the challenges that Warden Irwin named. What really struck me, though, was how they spoke about those challenges, not as we can't do this because of these. It was, these are the challenges that we're considering, and here's how we're approaching it. And they said very openly, they only have some of their population out for outdoor rec right now, but they're striving to figure out how to meet those challenges. I want to say too, the Dauphin County Prison is not perfect, right? They are struggling in a number of ways. But I think it's important to look to the expertise of others and to have conversations with them. How have you gone about this? The last thing I want to note is just this idea of the approach. And you could call me naive, and I certainly could be, but I do think there are experts who are not naive, that this could be approached through fear. Oh, there's this and this and this, but it could also be approached through opportunity and the benefits. So I want to encourage, and I really hear that in the request for qualifications and kind of the open-endedness as a way to see, well, what is possible here to make a good facility even better.
Thank you. Just identify yourself for the.
I'm Nancy Spooner with the Prison Society. I'd just like to piggyback off something Mark said and kind of addressing something that Deputy Irwin said. There are qualifications and criteria for anyone to be able to go to work release, or to be able to be part of Crossroads program, or to even have a work job here on the, in the facility. There are a lot of criteria for that. Would it be possible, is this something that the committee has thought about for outdoor rec that would improve the safety and security, would make that a little more manageable, and also could be an incentive, for perhaps better behavior, to say, well, if you want to get out here, this is XYZ, this is what you need to be able to do. Just a thought.
Other community members? Yes, you just state your name for those minutes.
Rachel Summers, been a member of the community for 35 years. And I was one of the folks that went to the Dauphin County Jail, and it was incredible to see, because it showed us that it can be incremental change. It doesn't have to be all at one time. They don't have all their inmates outside, even the people that go out might not get to go out for 2 hours a day. But they're making strides to get everyone out there. But in the meantime, they've found ways to In some instances, they've slightly compromised with the safety protocols, but it hasn't affected anything because the inmates are so happy to get to go outside that they've actually had no issues with behavior at all so far. You know, everyone's been on their best behavior outdoors. And they found ways to go about it where they might have one person overlooking 2 adjacent yards. They didn't need, I think for 1,000 inmates, they said they felt they needed 6 additional staff people to have them all outside. But like, there are ways to do it too, where, you know, it doesn't have to be all at one time. Like, it was just great to see that, you know, you can make incremental steps. It doesn't have to be something where you're like, you know, eating the whole cake.
Thank you.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me? I'm online.
Hi, I see your hand up there. Yeah, so can you just state your name, please?
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure if you could see my hand, first timer. My name's Carrie.
I was gonna tell you she would have her hand raised.
Okay, my name's Carrie Kavanaugh. I actually have had I'll start my video. I've actually had the opportunity. I was incarcerated at Center County Correctional Facility, unfortunately, a handful of times in my life. And I am here to really speak to my support for outdoor rec at the facility. And kind of going off what Mark was saying earlier, I totally understand the issues with short-term, with the security and cost concerns, but I would love to think about it more of a long-term thing, especially when you think of the relationship of security and cost. Over long-term, how implementing outdoor rec can help with both of those things. I think we're all aware, and we discussed earlier, and even the statistics you presented about how mental health issues and drugs are such a driving factor for people who are incarcerated, particularly at our facility. And I don't know, it's always seemed a bit of a cruel irony to me how our solution is putting folks in facilities that exacerbate all of these issues. You know, we know what a lot of the driving forces of like drug addiction and mental health issues are, and it looks a lot like the conditions that, you know, we put people in when they are incarcerated. And we have a lot of data on this. We have a lot of information on the benefits of the outdoors on individuals' mental health. There's also a lot of interesting research on how it helps staff members who work at facilities as well. I was reading a study out of Wales that whenever that institution implemented outdoor recreation, staff absences went down, self-harm was reduced. And all of those things have a cost to the facility. When, you know, people who work there don't show up, that's a cost. When folks are self-harming and it requires more medical care, more meds, more psych visits, all of that is a cost. And we have a holistic approach here where we're working towards building out the opportunities for reentry, building out the opportunities to do outdoor work at Centerpiece, individual businesses, graveyard, things of that nature. And I would love to see that approach taken for outdoor rec as well. And yes, there's a cost into implementing it, but over the long term, when we cut down on a lot of these driving factors that exacerbate existing issues and lead people back into, recidivism, those costs can be cut down on a long enough timeline. Like I said, there's a lot of data on it. I mean, I can speak from a lot of personal experience that the rec there is really stretching the definition of open. I know that's part of the language of the law. It's really stretching the definition of urban rec. And being incarcerated personally exacerbated a lot of the issues that kind of led me there in the first place and led to a cycle of offending, getting incarcerated, life falling apart even further, being in conditions that did not help my addiction or mental health issues, and then, you know, repeating the cycle all over again. We have data on this. I have a lot of personal experience with it. A lot of folks I have met have been in similar situations. And I know we were talking a bit about the length of sentences here and the nuances of that. And how that can also be a motivating factor for, people aren't there very long. Why does it matter if they get outside or not? And time doesn't work the same way when you're incarcerated. I think maybe COVID has given everyone a bit of a realization on how time can, expand and contract depending upon the situations that you're in. And on the outside, when you have a full, robust life, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year, that may not sound like a very long time. But when you are in there and that is your reality, day in, day out, day to day, you never get to see the sun, you never get to have fresh air. Your quote unquote outdoor time is a garage door with a grate over it that doesn't open half the time because of the bad weather in PA. That is a very unfortunate experience that like I said, exacerbates a lot of the reasons that lead folks in there into the first place. I love hearing about a lot of the other opportunities we're working on to get folks outside. But there is still the need for outdoor rec, specifically for all inmates, folks that don't qualify for work release for various reasons, that may be unsentenced and not have the capability to go to Centerpiece or a job or anything like that. And I understand a lot of the concerns about time, cost, security, staffing, but the fact of the matter is every institution faces those challenges. The Center County Correctional Facility isn't unique in, we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough money, security is an issue. Those are all real issues that need to be addressed. I understand that, but every institution that has outdoor rec faces those same issues. The experience in speaking with the folks at Dauphin County, really, really exemplified that. So I would love to see, as Mark kind of pointed out, the focus shift from, all right, well, this is a problem and it's going to be too much. And what about short-term security? And really taking a longer-term approach on how having a better institution that causes less trauma to people is going to positively feed into folks' experiences there and ultimately help them have better, more productive lives where they can kind of get their lives together and break the cycle a bit. And this is one piece of kind of the larger whole that Center County really seems to be pushing towards, a more holistic rehabilitative approach. And I think this is an integral component of it, and would really love to see the focus shift more from, well, this is a problem and there's all these issues, to, okay, great, like there are challenges, but what kind of creative solutions can we come up with? I mean, our society managed to put a man on the moon. I am fully confident we can figure out how to get outdoor rec at CCCF, So thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. And that's all.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Yes, sir. Your name, please.
Hi, Anton Alquin. I live in Center County, State College Borough. I just want to echo and give space to what Carrie said. I think like the voices of the people that our discussions really affect in terms of the incarcerated population aren't represented in this room. So I think Carrie's perspective is of utmost importance, and I want to acknowledge that. But today I just bring a bunch of questions in regards to our trip to Dauphin County. So DA Cantorna said that about someone on the alternative rec committee had said that building an outdoor rec yard would cost about $1 million. And so my question is, was there an RFQ filled out for someone else to sort of give us that number? Back in Dauphin County, there are 5 outdoor rec yards, cost about $300,000, a little bit more than that. And for them, that was 5 yards. And for us, it would probably not need to be 5 yards. And so 2 or 3 would probably need to be built, or some variation of that is what I'm assuming. And so my question comes from, a question that we both share: how is this going to be funded? And I think just thinking about it is there was a $600,000 increase in the correctional budget. And I may not just be able to have the details of where that has been allocated this year instead of last year, but I think this opens the door to asking, where do these funding sources come from? Are there other alternative funding sources that we could potentially pull from? And like the question of what would the long-term impact be is, I think, something that can't be overstated. I think, like Carrie said, the financial impact on the inmates in terms of health may offset some of these long-term financial costs that we have discussed over and over again. Secondly, I'd like to ask where the 9 to 15 officers came from. In Dauphin County, they usually have about 1 correctional officer per block and then 2 monitoring the outdoor rec that they may vary. But it just goes to show that, you know, logistically, it is possible to work through staffing shortages regardless of your circumstance. And so I'd like to ask the board as well if there are possible ways for us to really think deeply about using the resources that we have and making it in a way that works for everyone. And then finally, I also want to comment, if I don't know where that $600,000 are going in the correctional facility budget, if those were going to, you know, hiring and getting more quality employees, then that sort of even gives more light to the possibility of working through the staffing logistics. And finally, I wanted to ask about the security concerns. In terms of the anecdotes from other correctional facilities in the area, was those escapes primarily due to the addition of outdoor rec? Or was it simply just the mechanism by which these escapes happened, or the mechanisms by which these drugs were introduced into the system? Was it necessarily outdoor rec that was the causative factor of those security reasons, or was it simply just like a correlation that happens with the expansion of different elements of the correctional facility? Yeah, I'd really just like to emphasize that I think, even though this is a challenge, I think we are all here together to also ask the same questions you are. And I don't think that needs to be understated. So appreciate you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the community? Start there, we'll just work our way down.
I'm Janice Slim. I wanted to just comment on what the word outdoor recreation means, and it's reflecting back on what Commissioner Concepcion said, is what is the final goal? And it seems like outdoor rec could be conceived of in lots of different forms. And so the idea of having a landscape architecture person as addition to an architecture person, I think is really important in terms of, you know, light, air, greenery. I didn't hear anybody say greenery, which is the axis of greenery there. And then recreation is activity. So there's a lot of things that compose what outdoor means. And when thinking about what the end goal is, it could be comprised of lots of different ways of forming that outdoor space. And that should be part of the discussion as well. And how you get to that can matter, because you can have different ways of forming that outdoor space.
Yes.
Jeff Davidson, I'm also a Center County Harris Township resident. Really appreciate the direction and the goal of seeking qualified aids and assistance. One of the things that occurred to me was that I think quite a number of the people in the room, particularly on the staff side and the board side, have some additional resources potentially that they might bring to this that I think would be useful, both at the state prison level, county prison levels, other judges and their ability to provide resources in terms of finding good ways to do this, I think would be helpful, as well as at the national level. Unfortunately, our country incarcerates more people on average than almost any country in the world. And so unfortunately, we're pretty darn good at locking people up. And so accessing those resources to provide better places and better ways to incarcerate people with more access to outdoor activity seems like something you should also be great at. And so I would encourage us to draw widely, if we can, on the resources that are available to doing a good job of this. And I know that I see the intent and the goal of doing that. And so I applaud that, and we'll lean forward to in any way I can to help with that. Thank you.
Yes, Karen Weisman once again. I likewise want to echo that I'm really glad that we will move forward with an RFQ, which is what I think I've heard. And we are well aware that this is not an instant thing. But that's why the RFQ is so important because, it is county's responsibility to find out, what it is that we need to do in order to meet some basic human rights. It took us a year to get to this point of coming to the prison board meetings to get a commitment to the RFQ. My hope is that we could do that promptly so that even though it will take time for information to be gathered, and my trust is that we're not going to be asking the warden to do this work. I mean, the warden will need to be involved with somebody, but we're gonna be, essentially hiring people to do the feasibility study and not ask the warden to do 2 jobs at once. I mean, that is not what we want for you. I feel very optimistic and hopeful and just hope that we can, now that we are saying that we're gonna move forward, that we can do it in a timely fashion and not, just delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Yes, please state your name.
Hello, my name is Katerina Christina. I've been a resident of Center County for going on 15 years. Want to start by thanking the board for having this discussion. It's great to see this on the agenda and talk about feasibility study startup. So thank you for your time and willingness to discuss this. And I also wanted to bring back attention towards Carrie's very powerful testimony of her experience and how the people that are incarcerated here don't just disappear when they leave the jail. They come back into our community, they're community members, and their health while they're here is going to impact their health when they come back into the community. So this isn't just a question of what's happening in the jail. This is an entire community conversation and the health community and the health, mental health. So I think it's just important to not just get caught up in all the challenges and of making outdoor recreation possible here, but also just remembering why we're doing this and why it's important to periodically pause and think about that as well. We'll be here to remind you. One question I had to the board was, what are the action items you currently have and what are your goals for the next meeting that you'd like to see accomplished?
My name is Emery McKenna. I've lived in Center County my entire life. My name is Emery McKenna. I've lived in Center County my entire life. Fortunately, multiple members of my family have been incarcerated at this facility. And I also want to thank Carrie for their very vulnerable speech that gives light into members that are not here today to speak to this. And I am really excited about the ideas that Commissioner Concepcion brought up about widening our net on how things can look, because it doesn't necessarily have to be, again, all at once. It can be small incremental changes. And I think in terms of hiring issues, if we present a facility that more people want to work at, like Carrie was saying, when people want to come to work, don't take as many sick days, aren't self-harming, you will be able to fill those positions more readily. As well as, I'm an accountant by trade, so cost is a thing that is always in my head. And I understand money-wise the cost of what this will do for the facility, but we also need to think about the cost of the people being affected by not getting access to sunshine and fresh air. I mean, today's not a great example of fresh air, but regardless, it is something that is so intrinsically important to the mental health and physical health and well-being. So I want to thank you for having this on the agenda and to keep coming up with these, widening the net creative solutions, and hopefully we can move to that RFQ and start thinking more widely about the possibilities.
Nancy Rummel, and I want to just thank everybody for the dialogue. I think it's been great. One thing I was just wanted to mention that I think there are some similarities between the economic development here and in Dauphin County. There was a mall right on one side. There was a great movie theater complex on the other, which ironically was named The Great Escape. And then there was like a wooded area that one of the personnel was telling me was a major bike pit they had worked on. So I did see some similarity to that. And then just Leslie, like I'm looking forward, I think it's really exciting to think about not the final product, which is important, but actually the creative process, the step-by-step that will go on to exchange these ideas and see what's possible, what's not possible, and how we can work together to work things out.
Thank you. Yes.
Sue Smith, 54-year resident of Center County. I was just gonna mention also, you have volunteers in the prison a lot through the Prison Society. But there are a lot of people in this community who are experts in recreation, who want to spread the word about pickleball, for instance, or other kinds of sports that are contained and give a release to a person, make them feel better. And I think that would be easy job to fill.
Thank you. Any other members from the community? Yes.
Dan Gus from Harris Township. And first of all, I'd like to say that the work release work has been accomplished. It's really good that you made that, accomplished that so far, and that's to be commended that that work has been done. And also that you're taking the first step. I really see that you really are in the beginning of the first step of this process, and that's really great. I've been sitting on the board and gone through public meetings. I just want to say that, having multiple members of the public come in, being angry and talking about things that you're doing that they don't want you to do, it's really a pain in the neck. And I'm starting to appreciate that this process of public meetings actually does, sometimes it helps to have the public come in. I'd say we had an example where we had angry members of the public coming in. We had a project that was all vouched for by the professional staff. Everything was set, and this is the way we had to do it. We realized that it wasn't going to happen with this kind of community outrage. And then they looked at it again and they found a better way to do the project, and actually it's cheaper, better service, less energy. And that was all came about because we just had to face the fact that we just couldn't do it that way. And I think, so sometimes the public meeting process does accomplish something, even though it's, as I say, a pain in the neck to go through this.
Their hand, they'll just kind of work away. We knew this was Jerry a lot.
Say one more thing.
Can you make it relatively short?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say, Rachel Summers again, the Dauphin County Jail, you couldn't get more urban than that. I mean, we accidentally drove into the mall parking lot because like the next driveway is the jail driveway. Like they just put up extra fencing around it so that people would stop wandering too close to the jail. Like it's right smack in the middle of everything. And they told us they did come first, the mall came later. But anyway, so I just wanted to mention that. I mean, and they're able to make it work, and and so far everyone's been safe, and you can't get more urban than that.
Yes.
Yeah, Ken Frank. This whole process has been a real education for me and us. I was part of the group that went to the Dauphin County, and I've raised this before, but security is very important. to them. And I mean, we saw these new outdoor yards and they had their 12-foot high fences with razor wire over it, and then each yard is separated from the other yard by 10 feet and with an equally high fence. And there's netting over the whole top. You know, it's, for us, it was kind of upsetting partly because it's like a big outdoor cage. And, you know, so it's the whole, you know, aesthetic concerns was also, and yet they had an old yard, which was triangular shaped. It didn't have any netting. It only had one fence, not two. And it had a ravine with greenery on the outside, and they sent a guard out that's sit on the outside of that with a gun in case, you know, every time they have outdoor rec. So it's I would encourage any of you to go. We were received by a delegation, like 5 or 6 of the top leaders. More, and the director of criminal justice for the whole county, the warden, 3 or 4 deputy wardens, they would welcome you. Now, they don't have it all solved. They've got these new yards built, but they're not even hardly using them yet. They're still using the old yard. And, you know, we got the names of the contractors who built the fences. We got the consultant who helped design the whole thing. So we would love to do a presentation on what we learned, but you could learn it, or whoever was interested could go there, and I think they would give you some. Those of us who went would be happy to present, and we've written up some of it. But any other questions? One-on-one, we would let you know. I mean, it's now no panacea, when we get that, you know, and we get how long it's gonna take. It's gonna take. I mean, my wife is a pastor of church. We just are in the process of an $800,000 facility renovation. It took us feasibility study, you know, for $20,000 or more, and that took a year. And then we have an architect, and that took another year. You know, it does take a while, but it's important that we get started.
Thank you.
Cindy Carpenter, just to add to that, the Dauphin County Correctional Facility is a 2-story facility. It actually looks like it would be more complicated than here to transition people to the outside yards. And somehow they didn't look at that as a barrier. They looked at that, how to accomplish that and realize it. Also, I just want to mention some of the most impressive people I have met over this past year on this journey are people who've been formerly incarcerated. These are human beings, and they have productive lives, hopefully, after leaving here. Let's give them every opportunity to realize that they are, you know, they can function in society and, you know, maybe correct the ways that, you know, or whatever. So, thank you.
Thank you. You got everybody? Okay, I didn't get you.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Ashley Hamlin, I just wanted to say, to lift up what Carrie was talking about as far as time. I do have extensive experience with family members with serious mental illness, and a day can be an eternity. So time does not function the same way, and depending on your situation and in the facility. So I just want to lift up my support for an RFQ. I think that's an excellent start to this. So I appreciate the conversation and discussion.
All right, thank you. Did I get everybody? I think we did.
I don't see anybody else online, sir, for hand raised.
Can I just have Karen Kavanaugh, if she could possibly forward the study from Wales?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. If you give me, I have a ton of studies I can send you if you're interested. But if you send me, I don't know, what email would you like me to send it to?
Carrie, if you go on the Center County government website, there's a link to the correctional facility. My email's on there. And I believe all the commissioners' emails are on the main website for the county.
Okay, excellent. I'll send it over as soon as we hop off here today.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we still have a quorum? Yes. Much more of us.
Yes. Sheriff Sansel had to leave.
Just
And Brian's still on.
No, Brian had, the sheriff had to leave. I knew he had a 9:30 that
Okay.
he was gonna be up against it, so,
So we do have a quorum.
yeah. 4 of you.
So
Your quorum. The,
I'd like to ask the minutes to reflect that 3 of the 7 members of the prison board are not here.
all right, I kind of need help on how to formulate that. Yeah,
I guess my question would,
I don't kind of do, I do need it.
yeah, so we probably need a motion, but I'm not quite sure what the next step would be. So, yeah, John may have some ideas.
Direct staff to start investigating firms to engage in an review.
I would need that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, with that, we'll move on to monthly reports. Carrie, you're up.
Thank you. I just have 2 things I wanted to bring up. And I know we spoke about this before, I believe, at the prison board. But I wanted to mention the grant that we applied for to the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency for medicated assisted treatment. We finally received, we knew we're going to get the award, but we finally received the award letter, went before the Board of Commissioners last month. They, of course, accepted the award. So we've had several meetings, both with the correctional staff and our drug and alcohol office, medical staff from Prime Care, Crossroads Counseling. So we're establishing the process and billing things we need to do for that to implement that grant. It is a 2-year grant and will go through September 29th of 2024. But due to the state's delay in sending us our award letter, we obviously have not spent any funds yet, and we're already several months in. So I will investigate at a later time if we can extend the time period of the grant, not ask for additional funding. We call that a project modification request, and sometimes they will allow us more time since there's no cost extension. So we'll deal with that.
Yeah, one thing on that, we have a meeting scheduled later this month with the Prime Care doctors and the Crossroads doctors, so the medical staff can do their thing. So that's the final little piece in this, hopefully.
We're very, very excited about that. And well, we should be, just to give you an update on the Center County overdose death statistics. This is for the whole county. This is not in this facility. Please understand that none of these people died while incarcerated. So currently Center County is 4 confirmed drug overdose deaths with 1 pending toxicology resorts as of 6/6. 3 of those 4 included fentanyl as one of the substances, and 2 included xylazine, which is a horse tranquilizer and very commonly being used in production of fentanyl and the cutting of fentanyl. So we've had that unfortunately in several other deaths the past 2 years. And 1 of the 4 was ruled suicide. So that is the current numbers for this year. The board have any questions?
Any questions for me? Any questions? All right, for this side.
I'm sorry, I apologize, Your Honor. So the Board of Commissioners needs to be back at 10 o'clock for a regularly scheduled public meeting. We also need to carve out time for an exec session as well. So I apologize, but we are running super tight on time. I apologize.
All right, so quick prison society update, quick.
Just to report that the current parenting program is highly successful, and 4 men signed up and they recruited 3 more of their own. So it is a very positive experience.
Thank you, Centerpiece.
I recognize that and was going to cut mine short as well, but just since we talked about reentry, just wanted to make sure everyone knows that Centerpiece, the folks that come here to work at Centerpiece don't support Centerpiece's mission. The folks that come here from CCCF, they are our mission. They are the sole reason that Centerpiece is in existence. And that is because Marie believed in restorative justice and that individuals could be productive citizens of society while paying their dues for what they had done. So we thank you for the opportunity every month to work with individuals from CCCF so that they do have a more successful return to society.
Thank you. All right, we have to, just for the announce here, we're gonna have 2 personnel executive sessions after the meeting, and we'll move to adjourn.
Motion to go into executive session.
Favor?
Aye.
More adjourned?
Then, before we start on that,
Yeah. And for all.